I was asking Hawk questions about, during the break, unprofessional behavior he has witnessed from teammates, just because this Dedmon thing is so funny to me that I just know he didn't realize he was doing that. He knows his position on that team, and rage doesn't work like this. It doesn't consider consequences. But I know that Dewayne Dedmon, as soon as he saw that Theragun vibrating at midcourt, was just totally mortified by how unprofessional his rage was yesterday. What are some of the more unprofessional things you have seen in or around a locker room?
Oh man, unprofessional. I've seen players fight coaches, like getting a physical altercation with head coaches. Like I've seen that.
Really?
Yeah,
Physical altercations with a head coach that get separated by teammates that are caused by what?
In this particular situation, there was a coach who told a player to get off the field. He got kicked out. The player didn't feel like he did anything wrong. It was somebody else's fault. And he was like, get the hell off the field. And he was like, no. And so the coach runs up, tries to like grab this player. He had that dog in him that day and was like, I'm going to take on this, we'll call him offensive lineman. And he's like, goes to push him out. When he goes to grab him, the player grabs the coach, puts his arms up above his head like this.
Oh, no.
Throws him, and he goes like 10 yards rolling onto the ground. And then all the players are like, hey, come on, man. You can't be throwing the coach around.
Look, I'm not gonna put you in a tough spot. But for me personally, I'm visualizing Mike Pettin tumbling 10 yards.
But what are the consequences to something like that?
That specific situation, I don't think there was any consequences.
No.
That person might have got a new contract that offseason.
No.
Yeah. So that one specifically, no, I don't think there was a consequence. Another time that I'm thinking of right now, there was a special teams player who was he was like a kickoff guy, but he was really good special teams player, and he was going down like way too hard on the practice, and something happened. He gets into it with another player. That happens all the time. Fights, we've seen it. There's more cameras, more conversation around it. Okay, big deal, they separate. But he was like escalating it, and he was like feeding off the energy because he was getting this attention that he typically doesn't get in a practice because nobody really cares about special teams guys. And so he starts saying a bunch of stuff. And so coach is like, yo, man, chill, calm down. Nah, F this, I'm da-da-da. And so it just kept escalating and to the point where the owner is there.
Oh, no.
When they walk out and they're like, they cart over to like where this is. And they're like, yo, man, calm. Like, we appreciate the fire. And before he could see the owner, he's like, I'm going to shoot you. And he starts like talking, but he's not this kind of person. But this is very much like you're putting on right now because you think this is a tough thing. The owner's right behind him. That player got cut that evening. And
I'm going to shoot.
Yeah, it got to that level.
Jimmy Haslam goes to every Browns practice, though, so I wasn't surprised that he was there in his cart.
Nah, every owner goes to most practices.
Really?
Yeah, well, the teams I played
better
for.
things to do?
There are a couple of Dolphin stories.
Well, I guess that tracks.
That are similar in nature to that. But there was an argument with Daryl Gardner many years ago where a wide receiver who wasn't as big as Daryl Gardner did indeed go to his car and get his gun. And when I think of coach conflict with players, I've never seen a circumstance where an entire team of players were scared because Tim Bowens had dared to challenge assistant coach Mean Joe Green. The other players were frightened. Zach Thomas once said of Tim Bowens, I wouldn't fight him if I was the only one with a gun. and Tim Bowens and Mean Joe Green squared off. But you're talking about a player throwing a coach without consequence. I can't think that that's something that happens very often.
Oh no, you'd be surprised. Be surprised.
Really?
There was we've stopped tight ends from punching offensive coordinators. James Harrison, he was on my team one year, and he was very close to telling an offensive coordinator how he felt about him throwing the ball 3 times in a row right before half, punting, and then giving up a field goal for the defense. This happens a lot more frequent than you think.
Oh, it's not the conflict that I'm surprised by. It's the
yeah.
lack of consequences in front of the entire team, embarrassing the position of power so much that he's rolling on the field, and you don't do it that his power has been stripped. That obviously in violent world in front of the other employees.
Yeah, and that's what happens if the head coach. That's how you know where you probably sit within the organization. We're not losing this guard because of your confrontation.
But that's very much what it is, correct? It's simply what is your value to the organization.
Yes.
And so give me who you imagine to be anywhere in sports by your measurement, the mid-level guy, a name that can get away with that because that's the value of a coach. That player is so valuable to a team that that player can embarrass his coach in front of everybody and there won't be consequences because we need that player. How good does that player have to be?
In this situation, I don't think you would categorize this player as a super high part of the team, to be honest. He was a good player, but it wasn't we're not talking Joe Thomas level player.
Well, but one of the things I think people miss because they imagined that somewhere in professional sports is like high school football or whatever it is that they experience in football. When you talk about Aaron Rodgers, I think that it's not just the balance in his life. I think you have a unique viewpoint because anybody who's looking at just the $60 million probably doesn't have any earthly idea how hard it has been to be even excellent. Aaron Rodgers for 18 years, just size of draining responsibilities with your body hurting. When you ask him after losing a game in which Aaron Rodgers never looked like he looked this season. We're talking about Tom Brady at 45, the way he looks. Tom Brady's never had a season that looked like the one Aaron Rodgers just had. He's had constipated offensive seasons because of his skill players, but it doesn't end like that. It doesn't look like that. And we asked him the question at a time where I haven't heard a quarterback do what he did in that press conference. You tell me if you've heard a lot of quarterbacks say right there, kind of throw the chum in the water immediately as soon as you lose. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm coming back.
Yeah, no, that's the whole attention thing. That's the whole attention thing. I mean, even when you talk about players and consequences and Mike Pettin would always say, on our away games, our plane pulls off at noon. You need to be there by 12:40. If you want to see
11:40.
11:40, yes. You have to be there at 11:40. Our plane takes off at noon. If you want to see where you stand with the team, show up at 12:01, right? Because if Joe Thomas shows up at 12:04, the plane is still going to be there. If Andrew Hawkins shows up at 12:04, I'm going to be on a Southwest flight.